Welcome to the Common Man Football Show. My name is James Coburn, and today's episode, we're going to be talking about the Oakland Raiders versus Buffalo Bills Week 8 matchup based on analytics. Each week, I collect all of the current 2017 NFL team data in order to analyze and project potential NFL performance. And since it's a weekly collection, there will always be some variance, different trends each week. However, there will always be little nuggets of data that could become bigger nuggets of data as the season continues. So stick around as I analyze each week's matchups based on analytics. And if you're new to the channel, all terms and definitions will be in the description. So, starting with this game between the Raiders and the Buffalo Bills. When you look at the basic NFL stat comparison data, essentially looking at how the offense is doing, how the defense is doing, how the special teams is performing, most of the data favors the Buffalo Bills. Now, it's important to keep in mind that I will say the Raiders are a fairly fluid team, mainly because a reason why the Raiders are down a bit is because they lost Derek Carr, and they also went through a pretty tough couple weeks. Even before Derek Carr was lost, they had some really tough weeks against the Redskins and a few other teams as well. So they've not been a perfect team this year. They have, at the very least, the Kansas City game was a very interesting game because they took out arguably the top team in the NFL and the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, the top team at least in terms of most data when it comes to putting points on the board and defense and everything else like that. And, good combination of those two elements. And this is kind of where I should say that even though the Raiders aren't favored in this game, having Derek Carr back does make a world of difference, potentially, that the Raiders could find a stride, offensively speaking, to where their offense could be a lot better than what is shown right now. But this is just how the Raiders have performed over the course of the season, and this is how the Buffalo Bills have, performed over the course of the season. So essentially, if the Raiders perform like they've performed on average this season, they would not be favored in this game. And I don't think that's something that people would dispute. So, but yeah, so when you look at the overall data, big things that help the Buffalo Bills. First off, turnover ratio. The Bills have a much better turnover ratio than the Raiders. Now, the Raiders are not terrible when it comes to turnover ratio, but it is significant enough to give the Bills that advantage. On top of that, there are areas where the Raiders are better on offense. First of all, sack percentage. The Raiders allow less sacks than the Bills. The Bills have been one of the bottom teams when it comes to allowing sacks this year. So that's definitely going to be something I think is going to come up a bunch, is sacks in this game. Like, I think that this could be a game where the Raiders defense could potentially have a lot of success because of how poorly the Bills have played when it comes to giving up sacks. Same thing goes with offensive score percentage. Raiders are better in terms of offensive score percentage versus the Bills, but it's fairly close between the two. The Raiders started out the season really well in terms of their offensive score percentage, and it slowly dropped over the course of the week. Again, this is how the Raiders have performed over the course of the season. And they're better than the Bills in that respect. But it's a lot closer than I think most people would realize in terms of the ability to put points on the board. And then you get to defensive data, which overwhelmingly favors the Buffalo Bills. When you're talking about defensive offensive score percentage, the ability to prevent points on defensive drives, the Bills are much better at that than the Oakland Raiders. We're talking 46.61 for the Bills and 1.26 for the Raiders. The Raiders have a really, really bad defense in that respect. And on top of that, turnovers. The Bills have a 94.65 turnover percentage. They can create turnovers on defense, whereas the Raiders are pretty much zero when it comes to turnover percentage. They just do not create turnovers, fumbles, interceptions, all that stuff. They just do not do that. And that's a offense that has to be perfect. Has to be perfect because the defense is not giving you any favors. When people talk about, the defense needs to give you some favors, or let's have them turn the ball over on defense, that's not the case with the Raiders this year. Like, the Oakland Raiders offense has to do everything for this defense. The Raiders offense can't make a mistake, because if they make a mistake, they fall behind. That's the problem inherently with the Raiders team as a whole, is their defense is not creating turnovers, not giving opportunities to feed their offense to get them to put more points on the board, and that's a big issue. And then of course when you look at sack percentage on defense, the Bills are better than the Raiders in that respect. The Bills haven't been really that great with sacks. Now, Khalil Mack is still Khalil Mack, but I'm talking about the other people on this Raiders team. I'm talking about guys like Bruce Irvin. I'm talking about Mario Edwards. I'm talking about Eddie Vanderdoes. All these dudes that they were saying, are going to be amazing this year and get sacks, haven't done that. Have they been good against the run? Yeah, but being great against the run, stopping the run, is not, it's not as conducive to wins as sacking the quarterback, getting pressure on the quarterback. And those have been issues for the Raiders this year. On top of interception percentage, Bills have a much higher interception percentage compared to the Raiders, of course. The Raiders have 0 interceptions this year, which is really, really telling as a defense. So this is a game where the Raiders offense cannot slip up. It can't slip up, because the Raiders defense has not shown the ability. We are at week 8 right now, and the Raiders defense has not shown the ability to actually create turnovers, to get the ball into the offense's hands, to make plays and do what it needs to do to win. And because of that, this is all reasons why the Bills are favored in this game, is because of the defense. If the Raiders defense was better, say the Raiders defense was at least 50% better than what they are right now, then the Raiders would probably be a little bit more favored in this game. But because that isn't the case, that's why the Bills are heavily favored. Now, to get to special teams, so switching over to special teams data, punt return yardage more so in favor of the Bills. The Bills are better in terms of getting yards with punt returns, but the Raiders are overwhelmingly favored when it comes to kick return yardage. Preventing punt returns is more so with the Bills. Preventing kick returns is more so with the Raiders. Field goal percentage is more so with the Bills, though. Extra point percentage is also more so with the Bills. And punting average, of course, is with the Raiders, which the Raiders are usually really good when it comes to punting average anyways. But overall special teams, I would say, is more so with the Bills, though. The Bills have the advantage when it comes to field goal percentage, extra point percentage, and they kind of trade off when it comes to yardage and preventing yardage. So I would say that the big things that the Bills have is the ability to put points on the board with their special teams. And that's what the Bills have shown, and is something that the Raiders have not exactly shown. So that's definitely another sort of area that kind of favors the Bills. But overall, all you really need to take away from this is that the Bills are favored in this game because of their defense, mainly. Their defense, their special teams, and their offense's ability to not turn the football over on their own selves. Because the Bills basically have an offense that doesn't turn the football over, and they have a defense that is able to create turnovers, giving the offense more opportunities to put points on the board, which is always a major advantage in any game you're talking about. So now we get to some other sort of matchups. So looking at completion percentage for the Bills offense versus the Raiders defense, the Raiders are definitely they definitely have some advantage here in terms of first and second down. But third down, overwhelmingly, the Bills have a huge advantage on third down against this Raiders defense when it comes to completion percentage, which I think will come up in the future. I think it will come up in this game. Then, of course, you look at the Raiders offense versus the Bills defense when it comes to completion percentage. This more so favors the Raiders in terms of first down and third down situations. Second down is a little bit more even, but I would give this to the Raiders in terms of completion percentage here. Then, of course, you look at rushing downs. This is the Bills rushing offense versus the Raiders rushing defense. And the Raiders are good when it comes to first down and third down situations. Second down is the one area where the Raiders are not the best when it comes to rushing defense. But overall, I would say, again, the Raiders have a overall okay rushing defense. That's the one thing they do well. But again, rushing defense is not conducive to winning football games. If you have an average rushing defense, and a really above average passing defense, you're still going to win more games than a team that has a great rushing defense and a terrible passing defense. It's just statistically, that's just what the stats show. So even though the Raiders are good against the run, it isn't really much of anything because of the issues that they have with the passing game, which gets to the actually gets to the Raiders' offense versus the Bills' defense when it comes to rushing. And the Raiders are good on second and third down, so the Raiders will have some ability to run the football in this game against this Bills defense. But passing, now we get to passing. Passing is kind of the area where there are some issues. The Bills will have advantages in terms of passing. We're talking first down situations or third down situations. These are key areas where the Bills will have advantages against this Raiders D, and this Raiders D is one of the worst defenses in the NFL when it comes to preventing teams from converting on third down. It's been that way for the majority of this year. They've been going from being the worst to being near the worst this entire year, and I don't think that's going to change against the Bills, which I think is going to be a key issue in this game, to be honest. Then, of course, you look at the Raiders' offense versus the Bills' defense when it comes to the passing game, and the Bills are actually favored here. Whether you're talking first down or second down situations, the Bills definitely have the advantage in terms of those situations. So that's definitely going to be more so with the Bills' defense in terms of against the Raiders' offense. Then you look at sack rate. This is the Bills' offense versus the Raiders' defense when it comes to sacks. Mostly favors the Bills. The only area where I think the Raiders have somewhat of an advantage is on first down situations. Then, of course, you look at the sack rate of the Raiders versus the Bills. More so favors the Raiders, but there is some evenness when it comes to third down and second down a bit. It's kind of close in terms of those particular matchups. Then you look at the Bills' offense in terms of interceptions versus the Raiders' defense in terms of interceptions. And again, it's important to note the Raiders have 0 interceptions this year. They've forced 0 interceptions up to this point. So most of the data is not really going to show anything in favor of the Raiders because of that. And then finally, you look at the Raiders' offense versus the Bills' defense, and the Bills actually have the advantage here in terms of forcing interceptions on first down, second down, and third down situations over the Raiders' offense in that respect. So overall, how do I feel about this game? What are my general impressions? Well, I do think that this is going to be a Bills victory. If the Raiders play like they played last week, I mean, sure, there definitely is a chance that if the Raiders play like they played last week, then they could definitely have a shot at winning this game. And it's basically getting the Raiders to get back to the form they had last year. But I just can't get over this defense the Raiders have. The offense is not exactly perfect, which adds to some of the issues. And on top of that, you have a defense that is one of the worst defenses in the NFL, if not the worst in a lot of different aspects. So from that respect, I just have to say that the Raiders have a lot more work to do. I mean, on defense especially, they can't continue to have this setup. Or at the very least, if they're gonna have this setup, they need to be like the Saints. You look at the Saints this year, highly efficient offense, defense that's not amazing. They definitely don't have an amazing defense, but they are able to create turnovers, get the ball into their offense's hands to put points on the board. That is something the Raiders have not done, and that is the difference between winning and losing, people. So this strategy the Raiders have is not sustainable until their defense is actually able to get turnovers through the pass and on the ground. And if they can't do that, I think they're going to have a hard time beating the Bills. I'll just say that much about this particular game. And of course, you can follow my other work at draftcoburn.wordpress.com. You can also follow me on Twitter at Geometrics. And if you like this content and you want more content like this, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Share this video as well with anybody that you know, and I'll talk to you guys in the next video. Peace.